Welcome to the Authority File. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. Before I introduce this episode, I have some exciting news for you Authority File listeners. We have a new podcast coming. It's called Patron Driven, and it's a narrative-style podcast that brings you crowdsourced library stories where the personal meets the professional. Season 1 is a 5-part series that follows 4 library staff through the destruction of the Lone Star College Kingwood Library after Hurricane Harvey and the 2 years it took to rebuild. Patron Driven debuts June 22nd wherever you get your podcasts. You can visit our website, choice360.org, and click on the librarianship drop-down to sign up for our newsletters and to find bonus and teaser content for the new program. Okay, so back to the Authority File. In the next couple of episodes of this podcast, we're going to be talking about open access monographs. More specifically, I'll be joined by 2 guests from MIT Press, which, thanks to an $850,000 grant from the Arcadia Fund, is embarking on a 3-year project to develop a financial framework and sustainable business plan for publishing OA monographs, a business plan that virtually any university press can implement. If the University Press mission is to distribute knowledge and research as broadly as possible, then many in the market are increasingly looking to open access as a way to support that mission to its fullest. Print monograph unit sales have plummeted in the last 20 years, clearly impeding that mission and causing presses to be more dependent on subsidies or other subventions, as well as trade and journal-based editorial strategies to remain viable. Joining me are Terry Ehling, Director of Strategic Initiatives at MIT Press, and Raym Crow, a Senior Consultant at SPARC, who is working with MIT Press on its OA Publishing Model Initiative. In this 3rd episode of our 4-part series, Terry and Raym talk about what design criteria MIT Press is looking at for its publishing model, the revenue component of the business plan, and how the model will not only support STEM titles, but also the rest of the disciplines, including the humanities. I'm correct, you're also looking at this point at the design criteria for your model. Can you talk about a little bit more about what you've got so far in that respect?
Sure. I mean, that's where we really started, was identifying what it was that was going to, what were the parameters were going to be for the model. And so these criteria include, the press wants the model to integrate with its current editorial processes to minimize or eliminate any perceived difference with the existing monograph model. So in order to ensure that authors accept it and continue to find the press an attractive publishing venue. So that's the first thing is we're not assuming any fundamental change in the cost structure for the monographs. That's going to stay the same, and that's going to eliminate some models I mentioned earlier, premium models that are often, if they're going to be the principal model, you have to have a very low cost structure, and those kind of models will be counterindicated in the press's case. Another criterion is that's the content has to be available immediately. Well, we're not going to use embargoes. We want to use an open license. Probably offer. This is the press's decision, obviously, but there'll probably be a variety of open licenses available, and of course without any DRM restrictions. And the model needs to be as inclusive as possible and equitable to authors. So that effectively eliminates book processing charge models. And the model has to generate sufficient revenue first and foremost to cover the cost of the first copy cost of the monograph program overall. And it's got that revenue has to be stable over time and predictable over time. And those are critical elements of the model as well. And as Terry said earlier, we want it to be replicable by other presses.
Okay. So in the process of, establishing these criteria and going through that and inherently sort of eliminating various models because of those criteria, are you left with some choices? And I'm particularly curious in the revenue aspect. I think you might be leaning towards a subscription or serials-based model. Can you talk a little bit about? Yeah.
Sure. Well, as I said, one of the things one has to do is we need to ensure that there's the revenue stable over time. So so that's inherently going to be some kind of serial model. And with collective models, one of the issues is it has to be designed in such a way to ensure that stability. Otherwise, what happens is there'll be institutions that come in initially, that have a philosophical predisposition towards open models, for example. But over time, there will be erosion in even their support because of the inequity of the support. So we need to take whatever the model ends up being, and I suspect it's going to be will have elements of several different kinds of models, including private benefits exclusive to participating institutions, and a collective model or a collective aspect of the model at the same time.
Okay. Speaking of sort of the philosophical angle on this, or even the ideological angle, I mean, what kind of navigation, if at all, are you finding that you're needing to go through as you explore the various revenue models or revenue opportunities here, the sustainability aspects and so on, and lining that up with sort of the philosophical and ideological expectations that OA brings along with it?
So so let me just make sure I understand the question. So you're asking, how is the model going to financial model is going to how is it going to align with the philosophical just towards open access?
Yeah, it's kind of a very 30,000-foot kind of question, but I mean, there's a lot of philosophical baggage, so to speak, attached to open access, and different institutions have different ideas of what that looks like. And I'm just curious to see how, as you're working through, the discovery phase, essentially, of building this sustainability model,
So this is really
how that plays into it. Yeah.
Where the sweet spot is?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, there's as there are a variety of levels of commitment to open and ability to act on it across institutions in North America and globally. So in terms of one thing we find when we talk about these models, especially collective models, if you go to a model that's delivers local value, not just local value, but a local benefit that's exclusive to the institution participating, so it's where it's in their rational self-interest to participate, then that's more like a traditional market model in one sense. Where with a collective model, coordinating those and inducing participation just initially and over time is the real challenge. And so what we know we'll find, and we find already with the models, these kind of collective models, is there'll be institutions that are, at least certainly in North America and parts of Western Europe, that are committed to open access and will be behind the models. But that's not scalable for those institutions to support everything. And we want there to be the scalability, we want there to be equity. And so it's, and then there's also a divergence sometimes between a philosophical position and the rhetoric of institutions and their actual participation in some of these models. And so it's so that's why you can't rely on everybody who says yes, we're behind open access to necessarily queue up to pay. Because they've got there are other factors as well. Public institutions operate under procurement policies that preclude donative payments, and so even if they want to participate, and they're variously applied in various institutions, but that's often the policy that's in place. And so we need a way to allow all institutions to participate at some level, or as many institutions as possible. And that's always the issue with the collective support, is how do you maximize participation? You're never going to get everyone, and you're seldom going to get no one. I mean, people will come in and say, yes, we want to, even on a fully altruistic basis, say, yes, we want to participate in this. The problem is that kind of support erodes over time, again, because it's unsustainable, unscalable, and inequitable.
Okay. And then Terry, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that's exactly right. It's still a very dynamic area right now. Libraries seem to be redoubling their commitment to open access, but I think in some ways are really waiting to see what publishers and aggregators and other suppliers are going to propose by way of models, so that they can respond
Yep.
appropriately.
Right. Okay. So MIT Press in particular may likely have more STEM or STEAM titles available, but what you guys are doing in terms of developing the sustainable OA model under the Arcadia grant is not necessarily limited to those particular disciplines, right? This is something you're looking at that any university press could adopt.
Yeah, that's right. The model will support all of our monographs, although STEM titles will have their own target audiences, clearly. But Raym and I do not anticipate disciplines to have a practical effect on the structure of the model itself. And I'll let Raym amplify a bit on that too.
That's I agree entirely. That's, we don't see anything. Even the press MIT Press has more STEM titles than most university presses. We don't think that'll affect the model itself.
Okay. You just heard from Terry Ehling, Director of Strategic Initiatives at MIT Press, and Raym Crow, a Senior Consultant at SPARC, who is working with MIT Press on its OA Monograph Publishing Initiative. This 4-part series is brought to you by MIT Press. Join us next week for our final episode of this series, where we dare to predict the future of OA monograph publishing and how open access monographs could change the dynamic between the press and its institution and the competitive landscape overall.
Well, it'd be great to say, okay, the model is going to be so compelling that just all attention is focused on MIT Press, but that's not the objective, certainly. We're assuming that we're using the same editorial standards and processes as conventional monographs and using standard site licenses, our standard use licenses. The press will be able to retain its existing competitive position vis-a-vis other presses. It's not seeking this as primarily for competitive advantage. It's seeking this for increased access and equity. So the goal is not to dominate the market. The goal is to come up with a model that allows the press to continue its current operations, editorial operations, and continue to be self-sustaining.
If you like what you hear, rate us or give us a review on your podcast platform of choice, and if there's a topic you'd like us to cover, drop me a line. I'm at bmickey@ala-choice.org. As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced by Choice's digital media specialist, Mark Dirks, and digital media assistant, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.